We're so close to World War III. We're so close.
It's no joke, man. It's really, that really feels like that's what's happening.
It is happening.
Yeah.
It scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, it does me too.
And someone from the government was just having some sort of a press conference where they're saying, you know, we are at war and war is messy and this. And I'm like, whoa. Shouldn't we be doing everything we can to avoid this? Every single possible thing that we can to avoid this.
And it doesn't seem like they look ahead. They just go, here's what we got to do.
Right.
Here's what we have to do. Like, I get it. It's like what happened on October 7th, was it?
Yeah.
Is horrible. Absolute atrocity and like barbaric and absolutely terrible. And I get it. You have to retaliate and you have to do what you got to do. But how do you do that? Like of course you want to get rid of Hamas. That sounds great. You know what I mean? I completely support that. I think everybody supports that for the most part. But how do you do that without so much collateral damage? It's ridiculous. And then even more important than that is fast forward 5 years from now.
Right.
What happens? Like,
what are the repercussions?
Yeah. Especially around that whole area with all those Arab countries.
Yeah.
And we're backing that. We're backing them killing all these people there. And we're also backing Ukraine against Russia. And now it's looked like we're going to back Taiwan. We just sent an aid package to Taiwan, billions of dollars to Taiwan. It's like we're opposing all these, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're opposing China, Russia, and now these Arab countries.
Yeah, it's scary, man.
I'm not the person to talk politics, but that, I mean, or international military strategy. But I just watching the news and trying not to, and just try. And it's funny because I mean, I've always known about Israel and Palestine just from what I hear on the news and like just sort of hearing, like kind of understanding on the most surface level. And it wasn't until now, age 51, where I've been watching, like listening to podcasts, watching documentaries, trying to like educate myself and like figure out what this conflict, how it came to be, what the history was. And it's, the more I try to learn about it, the more complicated it seems.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, and the consequences for all of us are so grave. Because if it does go completely sideways, if someone goes nuclear, we're fucked. We're fucked. The world's fucked. I mean, we're getting knocked back into the Stone Age, if we're lucky. If we're lucky. If we're not lucky, the whole human race gets wiped out.
And all it takes is one person to go rogue.
Yeah.
And like you saw for Hamas to do what they did in Israel, that was totally strategic. They didn't do it. They didn't like do all that barbaric shit in that way, like just to prove a point. It was super, like they wanted a crazy emotional response. They were trying to escalate the situation, obviously, right? Like you would never do that without going, what is this going to do? It's obviously they're going to full on airstrikes, ground invasion. It's pretty obvious that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So they basically wanted that to happen. They wanted, like, I listened to the Coleman Hughes podcast. You just had Coleman on the show a couple days ago, whatever that was. The way he broke that down, how he simplified everything, and like he made so much sense out of it. But I just can't stop thinking about the repercussions of retaliation and escalation and getting every single other country involved, and it's just wild.
When it gets me is late at night when I'm alone. This was even before the Hamas invasion. It was just thinking about Ukraine and Russia. I would be at home and, just go through the news feed and read some stories, and then everyone in my house would be asleep and I'd be awake, and I'd just going, fuck, is this the last days of normal civilization?
Yeah. Because
every movie where, we ascend into the apocalypse or descend into the apocalypse, that's how it starts. It's like, there's normal life, you're dropping your kids off at school, bye honey, I love you, and then hours later, sirens, bombs, powers off, no water, no food, people are struggling. It's just like, if nuclear bombs start going off, the world will be unrecognizable. We will be right back to barbaric Stone Age monsters in a matter of months, matter of weeks, days even. There's no power, no food, no nothing. you know, there's the fucking border's been invaded by hundreds of thousands of illegals. How many of them are militant? How many of them have snuck in across the border and are forming terror cells? We don't know. I mean, that's the giant fear.
That's for sure happening.
For sure.
There's no doubt.
For sure.
I read this thing that there's like 6 to 10 million people that came across the southern border in the last 4 to 5 years. That's as many people that live in New York City. And then like a crazy increase in people coming across the northern border.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Like, and I see it. I've been in California a lot the last few months. It's insane how many more people are just obviously all of a sudden just appearing, like getting dropped off on like street corners with buses, literally just in the middle of nowhere. They literally just get off the bus with a cell phone.
But look at New York City. When Coleman was explaining how New York City literally has a mandate to house its homeless.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be the people that lived there that were down on their luck. And now it's people that have come in from other cities or other countries rather, illegally. And they're trying to make it so that those people can vote. And you see what they're doing with people from Venezuela?
Crazy.
They're sending people back from Venezuela.
Only from Venezuela.
Yeah, because Venezuela opposes socialism, so they're not going to vote Democratic.
Yeah,
they don't want those people.
That's crazy.
This is fucking wild.
It's crazy how it's so odd. Like when you start thinking about it like that, that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's like totally political. All these moves.
100%.
Yeah,
they're literally importing Democratic voters.
Yeah,
they think by allowing the borders to be porous and by giving people aid and giving people housing that you're essentially guaranteeing that if you can rig it so that those people are allowed to vote, those people are going to vote Democratic. And if you could say that, oh, voter ID is racist, like what? Voter ID is racist.
That's crazy. They think that.
They
don't think that. They don't think that. They know that that's not true.
It's horseshit.
Yeah.
It's all political horseshit. But that's unfortunately the level of discourse that we have today, especially with all the virtue signaling on social media and all the people clamoring to prove that they're the most progressive and the most open-minded and equitable, and we're all down for inclusivity and like
yeah,
bro.
There's going to be repercussions to all that for sure. I mean, you see the videos in New York City and Chicago and these places where they're dropping all these people off. They'll like video 500 people in a row and it'll be like 2 women. And almost everyone's like between 20 and 30 years old.
Yeah.
It's all military age dudes.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think's going to happen 5 years from now?
Right.
With like 10 million illegal immigrants here.
How much, Joe, have you looked at, Larry Fink, Soros, State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock? How much have you looked at what they're doing and what their ties are?
I've looked at it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
They're pretty much running everything. 88% of the companies on S&P 500, the largest shareholder of those companies is either State Street, BlackRock, or Vanguard. 88% of them. And then you see their influence in defense contracts. So we went through a deal. I'm like, let me see if these guys, this ESG, Larry Fink, Vanguard, State Street, if they have any influence on military contract, defense contracts. If you Google the largest shareholder for Raytheon, 3 out of the 4 top shareholders of Raytheon, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. It could be top 3 with Raytheon, but I think it's 3 out of 4. If you go look up General Dynamics, if you go look up Boeing, if you go look up, Northrop Grumman, and then you work backwards and you say, okay, how much money is that in what these guys are doing? You'll find the amount of money we spent in our military, $744 billion on how much we're making from defense, but you'll see some numbers saying last year it's 13% of our GDP, which is around $850 billion. That's more than the next 10 combined. We gave more money to Ukraine than Russia spent on their military last year. And when you look at these contracts, then you're like, okay, Fink is there, these guys are there. Okay, let's go look at Hollywood. Same thing you see there. Let's go look at pharmaceutical. Let's go look at this. And you're like, wait a minute. These guys essentially have a monopoly. Well, how big is BlackRock? $10 trillion. How big is $10 trillion? Only 2 countries have a bigger GDP than what BlackRock has, assets under management. US and China. That's how big BlackRock is. So then they went and they started getting all these other guys to sign on and say, hey, we want you to participate with the same thing as well with ESG. And they ended up having, I think they had 31 signers. I think end of 2022, they got 60 something signers for a total of $70 trillion of assets under management. So now they're controlling other places. And just recently, if you saw the rebuilding of Ukraine, did you see this contract? Rebuilding of Ukraine, $400 billion contract. BlackRock and Chase is helping rebuild Ukraine. They have that much control to get everybody to do what they want them to do. And then you go even deeper, which is even the crazier part with, the schools, like, the biggest union we have in America. I think it's National Education something. NEA is the largest union we have. 3 million teachers are part of that union. And you look at that and you go deeper in that with open society and who's funding it, who's the money behind these organizations. Comes back, Soros. How do you feel about the kind of power they have right now to fight against them? Because this isn't like a billionaire can come out and say, I'm going to go up against these guys. They don't have a little bit of money. A billionaire to these guys is nothing. They got the kind of control that can make companies fire boards, they can replace CEOs, they can replace leaders if they don't like. They have their hands so much into it where many times when people say the people of power, I'm kind of like, who are the people of power? Are you convinced these guys are really running the world, or what do you think about what some of these bigger companies are doing, like State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock?
Well, they certainly have massive amounts of influence. What do you think they're doing?
It's the question is, how do you fight it? Like, for example, the way we fight mainstream is by what? The show that we do. And we have to be patient. It's going to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years. Now you have some influence, right? Okay, we can fight. There is an actual strategy on how to fight that. When you have this much, Joe, 88% of S&P 500 companies, that is a form of a monopoly. Our monopoly law in America is 50%. They say 50%. Like if you tie and said, at what point is it 50%? I've done calls with the FTC, but they say 50% is a monopoly law. Do you know how many people in America have an iPhone versus Droid? Do you know what the number is, market shares in America with iPhones?
I think it's like 60.
58%, 60%. Yeah. That is already a monopoly. But who's knocking on the door of Apple? Tim Cook saying, hey, Tim, you got 58%. That's breaking a monopoly law. So if a president got up and said, if I'm going to be the president, here's what we're going to be doing. We have to look at all the contract. You can't overcharge us. We have to open it up. You have to sell some of your companies. You have to let them be independent again. Whatever way you got to break them apart to have competition again, because we don't have that today. We say we have a commander-in-chief, but really the commander-in-chief is Larry Fink. The guy running BlackRock is really the president of the United States, if we look at the kind of influence he's got in every industry, Joe. And he's like, well, I kind of feel bad. I'm ashamed that all the weaponization, the word, ESG is being used and all this other stuff. And Elon tweeted about the ESG. I don't know if you remember when Elon tweeted about ESG, saying the S in ESG is satanic. This is a part where even a Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, says, look, I love Larry Fink, but I'm not interested in having an emperor. Some words like that he said about Larry Fink. And by the way, Larry Fink is an interesting guy because he majored in college political science. His aspirations was politics. He accidentally got into money and he learned the trade, and then he lost $100 million at 36 years old, I think. And then he teams up with Schwartzman and they start this company. And after a couple years, they got $5 billion under management, $8 billion and $32 billion. I'm extremely concerned about what these guys are up to. We think our president is the most powerful person. That person is not, because behind closed doors, they're going to be like, look, guys, let's relax. That guy's only going to be there for 4 to 8 years. We're going to be all right. But now we're running the world. We control all the ETFs in America. We're controlling all this stuff. Everyone has to come through us, and we can tell everybody what to do because everybody fears not getting money from us, from being downgraded. A Tesla on ESG score is nothing, but a Philip Morris gets an A rating. How the hell the company that's Philip Morris has a better environmental social governance score, DEI, not DEI, but the CEI, they can bully some of these guys.
Let me ask you this. What do you think the goal of ESG is? Why do you think they're establishing these sort of parameters? Like, why is ESG a thing, and what's the benefit of it for them?
So Schultz said something very interesting. Schultz says, look, these guys are driven by money. They're not going to do anything to destroy an economy to lose their own money, because they want that. I said, okay, it's a very good, Andrew Schultz, I said, that's a very good point. You know how sometimes Michael Jackson, you see the interview with him with kids. Oh, they're just sleeping in the bed. That's all it is. And we're just having a great time and we're storytelling. And like, yeah, bro, I get it. It's a little weird. You got a 7, 8-year-old, 10-year-old kid sleeping in your bed and, all this stuff. And it's a little bit fishy what you're talking about here. It's not normal. Well, if you're in Hollywood and you've slept with as many people as these people sleep, and then eventually you have to have other options, because what else do you do? You have to try new things. How many threesomes have you had? how many this, how many that. So you start trying all these other things, and sometimes these guys go to such and such place. Why are these guys doing what they're doing? You have all the money in the world. You live in a $100 million house. You got nice cars. You go to all the nice restaurants. You meet prime ministers. You meet presidents. And then maybe there comes a time when you're looking at a couple of these guys, they're presidents and prime ministers, and you tell yourself, I'd be a better president than you, bro. How the hell am I not reading the country? Or they tell themselves, you think you're a president? You're not a president. You work for me. So the motive becomes control more than money. After you have all the money in the world, what's next? It's got to be control or a true vision.